The through video also, and as I told in the beginning, it is essentially a different mechanism of force transfer. And that mechanism is giving us an opportunity to avoid the stress concentration and therefore to increase the fatigue life of the structure, the component which we are connecting, and in a way to go for a more optimal design for the same life. Okay, so that is the key in this mechanism. What if this we intended that it will not slip? If forces, the friction developed go as per our initial estimate assumptions, so without slip, it will transfer the load. But for some reason, if we increase the load beyond that, either our underestimation of load or some misbehavior, so what will happen? There will be a slippage. Slippage means it will come into the contact, just like our riveted connection. So there will be a bearing between the bolt and that member, suppose a plate here, and that mechanism. So what I was showing is this simulation. If load is increased beyond the capacity of the friction joint, then there will be a slippage at the interface. Okay. And these bolts will come in contact at this shank will contact this surface of the plate, and behavior as we observed in the bearing joint will develop. Means there will be a stress concentration at this place. There will be a stress concentration in one side, okay, and opposite side on the connecting plate. Okay, so normal behavior as we see in the riveted, and consequence of that will develop. If whatever bolts we have provided, the size and number matches with the what we provide for the equivalent connection through rivets, then it will act as a riveted joint. Hopefully, immediately it should not fail. But if we have made use of the full capacity and optimized it, then joint obviously beyond capacity fails. Every structure beyond capacity fails. But here the additional safeguard to that extent that it will start behaving just like riveted if both the things matches. Still, it will have a consequence, and that consequence is that stress concentration will decrease the fatigue life. As soon as it moves, initially there is no stress here, no contact. Once it moves, there is a stress concentration here, and equivalent on the plate. So stress concentration, as I told, decreases the fatigue life. So movement will decrease the fatigue life. So if anywhere existing in the field, okay, we see slippage, means even if it is, we feel that nothing is happening, beyond that एक बार जो slip हो गया, even then we are in a range now where we have disturbed the design to the extent that it will not last for the fatigue life it has been designed for. Okay, so we should be careful in inspection and see that there is no slippage. Okay. And be mindful of this impact. Now, coming back to this is a conceptual part which I covered, and that this your terminology about the components, your this bolt and nut, and there's various definitions initially what is given. Now some more coming back to that. This one term is used as the clamp length. So clamp length is between this just as given in the figure, that includes your this washer, okay, and grip length includes the length of sum total of the length of the pieces we are joining, okay. So this is the grip length, but including washer, then it is the clamp length. This is IS 14399, or this is typical sizes. In the washers, there are three types: plain washers, your tapered washers, and your DTI washers. Plain washers are provided to prevent abrasion of steel member during the bolt tightening, because there is a moment when we are rotating the nut or bolt, so there is a relative moment. So that relative moment, we want to see if this happens between washer and nut instead of nut and the main member. Main member, we want to keep it as intact as possible. Okay. So then further, the equal distribution of the force is also important. So washer provides that purpose also. For 8.8 grade bolts, washers are placed under rotating head only. For 10.9 grade bolts, these are provided on both the sides. And for long and slotted holes, additional plate washers, which can be maximum 3 number and thickness can be maximum 12 mm, to adjust the grip length of the bolt, we can provide. If members are not fully parallel, there is some angularity in this to make up that, because in friction joint it is more important. So that surface contact is important, because this force transfer, forceization is through the contact. So up to 3 degree for bolt up to 20 mm and 2 degree for bolt more than 20 mm, this we can provide the taper washer. The plain washers are like that, and here also that if you see here, the manufacturer's identification symbol is provided, and this is taper washer to make up the difference. And very important, the DTI washer. So DTI washer act as a indicator for the level of the tension in the joint. As we see that the tension in the joint, the bolt is the main determining factor how much friction will be developed in terms of your kilonewton or ton between the plates. That will depend on the axial force developed provided in the bolt. So to measure that, DTI washers are provided. This is only mechanism now permitted by RDSO. Some of this our IS 4000 and some other literature you might see this after snug tightening, this much rotation of the nut will ensure that much load. So that is not considered adequate provision. Instead, we want to measure that tension, or that measurement is through these DTI washers. So these are protrusions or the DTI washers. There are different numbers and for that different specifications. Okay, what is acceptable or not acceptable, I will cover that. So these are acting just like our miniature proving ring. In proving ring, this in proving ring, we estimate the load based on the deflection. Same principle is here based on how much it is compressed during the tightening. After the tightening, that compression will determine that whether that adequate load is reached or not. And for that, for those limits, how much it should be minimally at least be tightened, we have provided that feeler gauge, go, no go, gauge system has been provided. So, DTI, these are calibrated for that particular load. Load is different for different class. 8.8 it is different, 10.9 it is different. So, one type of washer will not be compatible or suitable for other property class. Mr. Naresh Kumar, kindly mute your mic. And for identification, whatever is the property class, based on that, it is marked H8 or H10 for the 8.8 property class and 10.9 property class, like this. So it is for the M20 size bolt, means bolt dia is 20 mm, there it will be used, and this will be used in the 8.8 class. Okay. Here in the latest provision, because once it is provided, it is difficult to see where we measure that gap for inserting the feeler gauge. An indicator has to be provided. That provision has been inserted in our BS11. These are our proving ring. Even proving ring we calibrate. Suppose you might think for your concrete testing machine, cube testing machine and all that. Even proving ring we calibrate from the master proving ring every year or so. Okay. Similarly, these DTI washers are calibrated. Calibration is done after this finishing coat in the manufacturer's lab. So for calibration, at least 8 number DTI washers shall be taken for the each lot, and all test sample must pass. Okay, and only passed DTI washers should be brought to the site. This is very important even for other material also, where is our code specification provide that only tested material should come to site. We should enforce that. It is not right, let us dispatch it. Anyway, if test fails, it is okay. No, that is not acceptable. Okay. Then with regard to this placement of this our DTI washers, so it can be provided under the bolt head side or nut side. Here, for example, it is provided under the bolt head. This is bolt head. DTI washer has been provided with protrusions facing towards bolt head and plain face towards the component. Okay. And in this assembly, it is provided under the nut. Protrusions towards nut and plain surface other side. Then other is our this plain washer here and plain washer here. Generally, we should do tightening of assembly by rotation of nut only. If it is done differently, then there are different provisions. In this HSFG connections, we have seen in that video again it is highlighted, and we have seen that this have discussed earlier also, that most important part is the friction, because that through friction only force is transferring from one plate to the other. So surface is very important. Whatever is the prescribed for the surface, unless that is adhered to, that friction mechanism will not be have what we intended. So it is very important. So what our this code prescribes that for the new structure, the interface between plies, as I told in the beginning in the definitions, these components, suppose two plates, so each ply, that where these which are connected together by HSFG bolts shall be aluminium metallized without any overcoating. So it will be aluminium metallized, there will not be any coating thereof. For bringing that, it has to be properly protected to bring it to the site. Okay. And where we are going for the existing structure, removal of existing paint by wire brushing, flame cleaning, etc., equivalent to scraping, that is required, and all loose rust and paint layers shall be removed. If surface of new structure is painted inadvertently, which should not happen, okay, then fresh metallizing to be done after sand grit blasting. First, we should sand grit blast the surface, remove the paint, let it be complete metal becomes visible, then metallize again. But it cannot be used without that. Over the paint, we cannot use it. Friction will be very, very less. It will not behave properly. Capacity will be drastically reduced. Then coming to the tightening of the bolt. So there are two stages. First stage, these plies are brought to the close contact and it will be tightened to the manual range, which I have explained in the beginning, at what we call to the stuck tight level, and which has been defined by RDSO guidelines. That snug tight condition means the nut is tightened using an ordinary range. The range has to be ordinary one. An average worker applying maximum force on the range. Tightening done starting from more steep to less steep side. So, and there shall be no gap in the center, and gap at the edge should not be more than 2 mm. If so happens, then open the assembly and repeat the procedure after straightening of the member. So, in the plain members, it should not happen. If it is happening, there is something wrong, it got bent. So, for that bend, there is a limit. So, more than 2 mm gap should not be there. And this is the sequence of the tightening, first stage tightening. So we should start it like this. Suppose this is our this layer. So first we go for this, then this symmetrically, then this row, then this row, then this row, this row, this row, this row, and like that. Okay. Sequence is important. And tightening to be done by mechanical wrench only. Mechanical can be pneumatic type, it can be hydraulic type, or it can be electronic type. And this torque wrench also, because torque, specified torque has to be provided. And where we have to ensure that, then that machine need to be calibrated. And calibration frequency has been specified as once in a year. If in between somewhere it fall down and all that, get a doubt, you should do it again. So in tightening, we apply a pre-calibrated torque on the bolt. And the tightening of HSFG bolt is to be done at a stress level which is beyond the yield point. Beyond the yield point, there will be a plastic flow takes place. It is important to remember always that we are tightening the HSFG bolt to a beyond the yield point. So once tightened, suppose, and we remove that, tightened means we have stretched that bolt. And when we remove that, suppose, it comes back. So there will be a residual strain because we have tightened it beyond the yield point. There is a plastic flow, so there will be residual strain. If we tighten it again, so that much displacement will create a problem because that force will not develop. Whatever is the plastic strain, equivalent to that much force will not be developed. So overall force developed under tension will be less. And tension force in the bolt is the only means to provide adequate frictional force between the plates. So overall intended load will not be able to carry. So it is very important. Therefore, in addition to this, we applied a specific torque, and you might have seen because of small perturbations on the surface, which video it was a little more clear. From the torque alone, we cannot be very sure that adequate this tension has developed, and torque is dependent on friction, which is not that accurately determine friction not only between the components but between nut and washers at that location. So direct indication of the force, axial force in the bolt comes from the DTI, which is a proving ring for us. So compression in the projection of the DTI washer indicate what is the tension, how much is the tension in the bolt. So compression of DTI washer we check by feeler gauges. Two types of feeler gauges we use, whether adequate compression has reached or not. We use 0.4 mm feeler gauge when we are providing this tightening from the when we have provided our DTI on non-rotating side. Suppose this is our bolt head and this we have provided the DTI washer. Okay. And from this nut side we are tightening. Okay. From this side we have provided our wrench. So we will use 0.4 mm filler gauge. When DTI is provided on rotating side, suppose in this particular assembly, we are holding this and rotating this bolt head. Then we will measure whether it has reached to the required axial force or not by providing through a filler gauge of 0.25 mm. And if it is not going inside this filler gauge, we call it a refusal has reached. And how many refusal are reached? That is specified for the particular bolt assembly. One more filler gauge, 0.1 mm, we used so that it is a further assurance about the overall quality of the assembly, mainly for our DTI washer, 0.1 mm filler gauge. We should remember that there may be some conflicting instructions you may come across. So initially 0.1 mm filler gauge provision was there. In between, this provision was done away with, and later on, with experience, with some feedback, it has been reintroduced. So currently, this provision is there that it has to be checked by 0.1 mm filler gauge also. So 0.1 mm filler gauge should not go. That is our should go. That is our intention. That this miniature proving ring should not completely collapse. Okay. So we check by this 0.1 mm thick filler gauge. If it cannot be inserted, then it means our proving ring has fully compressed. So it is not measuring. Proving ring itself has fully compressed. Okay. So tension may be more or less, we don't know. So full compression of the indicator we say if 0.1 mm filler gauge cannot be inserted. And such full compression should not be more than 10% of the DTIs in a connection, in a bolt group. This number of indicator position in DTI washers, out of which minimum number of filler gauges refusals are required for adequate tension in the shank of the bolt. That is given if the washer is with 4 our miniature proving ring, you can say 4 protrusions. Out of that, minimum refusal should be 3. Similarly, sir, with the 5, sir, it should be 3. And sir, 6 hello.
सर मैं महावीर सिंह बोल रहा हूँ सर.
हाँ जी
सर, ये 0.1 वाला है, 0.1 वाला फिलर गेज है सर. ये 6 प्रोट्रूजन्स में मतलब ईच में जाएगा सर, या फिर इंडिकेटर 1 में चला गया 2 में नहीं गया तो वो मान लेंगे सर में?
पार्डन
सर, जैसे अपना 6 प्रोट्रूजन्स वाला इंडिकेटर है अपने में सर, डीटी वाशर में.
आप जरा क्वेश्चन उसमें डाल दीजिए. आई विल डील दिस क्वेश्चन. 0.1 वाला जो फिलर गेज है, ठीक है ना, 0.1 mm फिलर गेज जो है, it should not be not more than 10% of the indicators.
नहीं और मतलब और 1 वोल्ट के सर, और 6 का ग्रुप 6 का इंडिकेटर 6 में जाना चाहिए.
Suppose in a joint assembly, okay, let us say each joint is having, let us say 10 volt. and each bolt is having suppose 4 indicators.
सर
So there are 40 indicators.
जी जी
Okay.
सर
So not more than 10% means not more than 4 out of total.
नहीं सर नहीं और जैसे और 4 इंडिकेटर में जाना चाहिए सर या फिर 2 में चला गया तो
नहीं मैं कह
1
रहा
में
हूँ
नहीं 2 में नहीं जा रहा
इसमें because here we are testing the quality of the DTI individual bolt नहीं overall load के पूरे joint के लिए.
सर
ठीक है. तो इसमें not more than 10% of the indicator in a connection. Connections में
जी जी
सबको
जी
आप
सर जी
individually treat कर लीजिए इसमें.
जी 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 सर जी सर
So for similarly for 7 it is 4, for 8 protrusions it is 5, for 9 it is 5. Very important, only trained personnel who understand the procedure shall carry out the tightening of the HSFG bolt. Okay, because of this plastic flow, जिसमें permanent deformation is happening. So all the concepts we cannot retighten it. Okay, for everything, person has to be sensitized. Okay, for DTI washers, how to see adequate compression, how to see there is not full compression or more compression. Somebody has to be trained. So only trained personnel who understand the procedure shall carry out that tightening, and our code therefore provides for any person before he is deployed, AEN or equivalent officer will issue a competency certificate after testing his knowledge. And competency certificate issued once, it will be valid for 6 months. Regarding coating, the zinc flake coating of DTI washers as per our ISO 10683, nut and bolt, if it is, somebody kindly mute your mic. Okay. So, zinc flake coating for the DTI washer, for nut and bolt, it is a property class 10.9. So only zinc flake coating is permitted. Okay. But for 8.8, hot dip galvanizing as per ISO 10684 is also permitted. For hot dip galvanizing coating is to be done. To ensure that the nut is easily accessible for opening, is not accessible easily by opening by this anti-social element, we provide some anti-theft, anti-sabotage measures. So one is the location. We can locate it so that it is difficult, but there is some limitation. But to that extent we can do. So what we can do, in girder, towards outside we provide the outside of the girder. In flanges towards bottom we can provide. In composite construction towards inside of the concrete we can provide. In bracing towards the rolled section we can provide, so that it is more difficult to access. Then some suitable bonding agent like localite, कुछ और भी होंगे, we can apply on the thread projecting beyond the nut, so to seize the bolt in position. Here there is a issue because if we see typical localite recommendations, those will be you provide everything in advance. Okay, but for us friction is very critical. Our provisions, codal provisions do not provide that. We can provide only for the thread outside afterwards. And welding tack as a measure of anti-theft or anti-sabotage is not permitted as per our codal provisions. because once we heat, then there is a metallurgical microstructure changes which we don't accept. Regarding design of the joints, this whatever is the axial force, that is the force at the interface. So slip factor, which is our equivalent to our mu, that much force each interface can maximum transfer. Okay, so number of effective interface into slip factor into minimum tension bolt, that is the total carrying capacity of the joint. That we divide by suitable factor of safety for a safe carrying capacity of the joint. And that is factor of safety is 1.4 under normal loads. And where the effect of wind has to be considered on this factor may be reduced to 1.2. These are the sizes and minimum bolt tension specified for the property class for the material which we accept. These are the minimum bolt tension in kilonewton for the property class 8.8 and 10.9. We use mainly M20 and M22. So for M20, for 8.8 class, which is preferred class considering the residual strength further beyond our yield point. So for M20 it is 147 kilonewton, and for M22 it is 182 kilonewton. And balance you can see in the table. When we design a connection as a friction grip joint, this slip factor, as I told, is very important, and it depends on the surface which is coming into contact. So highly dependent on the how we prepare the surface. So for surface, blast cleaned and sprayed metallized with aluminium with a metallizing thickness more than 100 micron with no overcoating. Underline, no overcoating. Slip factor of 0.4 we take in the design. And surface cleaned by wire brush or flame cleaning, which is for the only existing structure, not for the new structure. With loose rust and paint layers removed, we take in the design only 0.25 or any other surface preparation. Then it had to be estimated as per the IS 4000 experimentally for same preparations. Required number of samples we prepare and determine at what load the slippage occurs. As regard to this inspection of this HSFG bolt, so obvious, visual or broken or loose, visually broken or loose we don't accept. If rust appears beneath the bolt head or washer or nut, then consider defective. And whatever we consider defective, immediately to be marked. Any mark left by water or apparent relative movement of steel parts joined by HSFG bolt, then it is defective, as I shown in this simulation. Because there is a relative movement, now there will be further contact, there will be stress concentration. So even after replacing, wherever it has occurred once, we should keep a data and monitor it in subsequently also. So defective bolt should be marked by paint and replaced expeditiously. HSFG bolt should be painted as per the schedule. Whatever is the for the girder, same we have to follow for this. There are some precaution regarding HSFG bolt that complete HSFG assembly should be procured from a single manufacturer, because every component, be HSFG bolt or some other, there are some tolerances. So one manufacturer for one part may go one side of the tolerance. If he source that other component for other, he may go other extreme of the component, this tolerance. That is not good. Unless we tighten the tolerance many times higher than the minimum workable. Okay. So better it is we source it as a assembly. So put together whatever tolerance, the resultant behavior we achieve. Here resultant behavior most critical for us is the tensile strength and tension developed when our DTI indicator suggests so that adequate tension has developed. So our code has specified that we will source this as a single assembly. Then there will not be dispute also why that adequate tension is not developed. And all bolt and nut DTI washer assembly shall be accompanied by a manufacturer test certificate. Marking I have discussed, whatever codes case that marking is to be there. And calibration of DTI washer or torque wrench, which we discussed, is very important. And torque wrench should be calibrated. We should not use without calibration it. DTI also, which have not been calibrated, we cannot use that assembly. Washers, which I told, if normal dia is less than 20 mm, up to 3 degree, and if it is more than 20 mm, 2 degree only. Surface tension is important, and it must be ensured that the metallized surface is not painted. It is very, very important. We should train our people, repeat this item and again to our people that it should not be painted. And no joint shall be assembled for bolting until the contact surface have been inspected and approved by the competent authority. Bolt once tightened to the second stage. So first stage tightening was snug tightening, which was done by an average person with an ordinary range. Okay, so why the snug tightening? Second stage tightening is what we do with the mechanical wrench. Okay, so when we go for the second stage tightening, the bolts undergoes plastic deformation. So if we remove, suppose unturn those, remove nut, bring it back, now there is a residual plastic deformation. It means it cannot give now that behavior. So this means bolt once tightened to the second stage cannot be reused. Okay, it cannot be reused in the same hole, it cannot be reused in the other holes. This is very, very important. And it is therefore important to not to mention in the inspection that which bolts are loose, these to be tightened. Such feedback also some of the companies have given, some of the inspection, such instructions also they came across. This is I have covered in length. We should not treat this as a normal joint. Here behavior is through the friction. It is different. Okay. So it means we cannot use it in conjunction. Same joint. Rivets and HSFG bolt. Another precaution that we should check the tightening procedure. If bolt breaks during the tightening, it means both sides either are being over tightened or quality is a problem. So over tightening, we can see that we recalibrate our torque strength, and if after that, then check the, and along with that check the quality of the bolt. In this presentation, I have shared 1 or 2 papers, some good papers. Further, somebody is interested, he can go through these papers. This I will be putting in group this presentation. As I have also done that simulation, you might have
This
seen that
meeting is
somewhere,
being
somewhat
recorded and
preload.
summarized.
Okay. So this is all from my side. Now I'll take up if any question is there in the chat box.
नमस्कार सर।
Namaskar. This, let me see some this first from the chat box. Any question? Otherwise, you put your question. I think there is nothing in the chat box. Yes, go ahead.
सर हमारा ओपन वेब गर्डर है 150 फीट का। उसके नी ब्रेसिंग अभी 2021 का गर्डर है, कंस्ट्रक्शन ने बनाया था। और उसके जो नी ब्रेसिंग है उससे पूरे HSFG बोल्ट ढीले होकर गिर रहे हैं।
इन्वेस्टिगेट करना पड़ेगा आपको।
जी सर जी।
So इन्वेस्टिगेट फर्स्ट, जहाँ क्लास जो है आपको रिप्लेस करना है, नए उससे टाइटनिंग नहीं कर सकते, नए बोल्ट से ही रिप्लेस करना है। और जो ओल्ड है उनको पूरा बोल्ट को भी एनालाइज करना है, और स्ट्रक्चर में भी कोई इशू हो सकता है, डिजाइन का कोई इशू है, या आपके यहाँ कोई सेकेंडरी स्ट्रेस डेवलप हो रहे हो, पूरा इन्वेस्टिगेशन के बिना नहीं कह सकते उसको। Only thing at this moment I can say, don't wait, immediately replace with new bolts and ensure proper torque, proper tensioning assured through the DTI washers.
Sir.
Okay, otherwise you have to get it done proper investigation and reach to what is the root cause. Whether it was not tightened properly, whether bolts were not proper. Okay. Any
excuse me, sir.
Yes.
सर रिपेयरिंग रिवेटेड गर्डर है सर, उसके रिपेयरिंग में जहाँ पे हम रिवेट नहीं प्रोवाइड कर पा रहे हैं, फिजिबल नहीं है सर, वहाँ क्या DTI बस ये HSFG बोल्ट यूज कर सकते हैं सर किसी पर्टिकुलर जॉइंट में एक आध?
नहीं, देखो HSFG बोल्ट जैसा कुछ नहीं होता है। HSFG मैंने आज ये टोल्ड लीजिए फ्रिक्शन ग्रिप जॉइंट होता है। ओके
जी।
तो जॉइंट में फोर्स का ट्रांसफर का मैकेनिज्म डिफरेंट है, वो उसको आप HSFG में तो कन्वर्ट पूरा रीडिजाइन किए बिना कर नहीं सकते, ठीक है। वो सरफेसेज का उसका पूरा वो आप नहीं कर सकते। नाउ यू वांट टू आई पुट योर क्वेश्चन इज, कैन आई यूज द हाई स्ट्रेंथ बोल्ट देयर?
जी जी जी।
ओके, so instead of rivet you want to use the high strength bolt.
जी जी जी।
So ensuring other parameters which this through rivets we want to achieve, temporarily we can make use, but don't treat it as HSFG bolt.
अच्छा सर।
And it will behave just like your rivet. If shank size is same, it should carry same shear force. Designing should be checked with respect to that. tension in the bolt is not going to help you. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Because it will be a shearing action, just like your this
Normal bolt.
rivet. And go through the why that rivet there is a problem. It is how much old and all that. Because root cause first we should establish and then take the call on that one. But where nothing is possible, yes, whatever something is possible, these always we do.
Okay, sir.
But don't treat it HSFG and DTI and all that are not relevant for that. It is only just a high tension bolt. Your axial force in the bolt will not play a part even for holding that, because a rivet will not come out or in vibration or anything. Here you can put any additional. Here you can freely use that localite and all that, so that this your nut doesn't come out.
Okay, sir.
नमस्कार सर, मैं भोपाल से बोल रहा हूँ, एसएससी कंस्ट्रक्शन अनिल तिवारी। सर, एक क्वेश्चन अभी हमारे साथी महावीर सिंह जी ने पूछा था कि जो फिलर गेज की टेस्टिंग करते हैं, इसमें 0.1 mm का जो फिलर गेज है, जब हम इंसर्ट करते हैं तो किसी भी एक पर्टिकुलर एक बोल्ट की डीटीआई में जो
उसमें that code says as I explained there also.
सर, मेरा थोड़ा क्वेश्चन अभी पूरा नहीं हुआ। जो प्रोस्ट्रूशंस रहते हैं डीटीआई में, वो 1 फिलर गेज कितने में चला जाए तो पास मान लिया जाता है। जैसे 5 प्रोस्ट्रूशन वाला है तो उसमें 5 प्रोस्ट्रूशन में 5 में से कितना 0.1।
Okay, I will reply differently.
ये कहीं लिखा नहीं है सर।
Kindly listen, लिखा हुआ है।
जी सर जी।
When we are discussing a filler gauge of 0.4 mm and 0.25 mm.
जी।
So consider the bolt as a unit. ये लिखा हुआ है।
जब 0.1 में भी उसी पैटर्न से कंसीडर करें।
1 मिनट पहले 0.4 0.25 की बात करते हैं, ठीक है
जी सर।
तो बोल्ट के लिए लिखा हुआ है, उसमें कंफ्यूजन है।
0.4 0.25 तो क्लियर है सर, उसका तो
क्लियर है ना, ठीक है। ओके 0.1 का जो है
जी,
0.1 is for the joint, it is for the number of indicators.
मतलब 100 बोल्ट लगे हैं किसी जॉइंट में तो 10% में
वो नहीं जाना चाहिए। 10% में टोटल
नो गो नहीं होना चाहिए। और 90 में गो होना चाहिए 0.1। इंडिविजुअल किसी बोल्ट में चेक करेंगे 0.1 करते हैं तो
इंडिविजुअल में चेक करने का नहीं, उसमें टोटल का दे रखा है, उसमें तो इंडिकेटर।
ठीक है
और कोई इंडिकेटर्स का हो सकता है, मे बी क्लैरिफिकेशन लिया जा सकता है। बिकॉज इंडिकेटर का मतलब डीटीआई है, इंडिकेटर का वो मान लिया फॉर एग्जांपल ले कि भाई वो डज इट इंडिकेट एज ए डीटीआई 1 डीटीआई एज ए इंडिकेटर। सो उसका 10% क्या होगा, मैक्सिमम हम 8 प्रोवाइड कर रहे तो भी 0.8 ही बनेगा। इट विल नॉट मेक सेंस। सो फ्रॉम दैट कोरोलरी आल्सो इट इज
थोड़ा ऐड करना चाहूंगा सर। तो इसमें जो इंडिकेटर लिखा हुआ है, इंडिकेटर में सपोज एक डीटीआई वॉशर में 6 इंडिकेटर हैं, किसी जॉइंट में 100 वोल्ट लगे हैं, तो टोटल 600 इंडिकेटर हो गए।
करेक्ट है।
600 इंडिकेटर के 10% में नो गो नहीं होना चाहिए, ये उसका
करेक्ट। तो ये दिस
आंसर
this senior professor other Mr. Anand Gupta ji here, he rightly explained that. I think it is clear now.
Okay sir, thank you sir.
Any other question?
जी सर। हेलो।
हाँ टेल मी।
सर मैं जितेंद्र कुमार मीणा बोल रहा हूँ, मैं SCCR बिलासपुर सर। सर हमारा ओपन वेव गटर है 30.5 मीटर का, जिसमें हम HSFG बोल्ट यूज कर रहे हैं, जिसका DTI वाशर सर हमारा 70% बोल्टों में पुश हो रहा है सर रिफ्यूज, और
30% में
पुश हो रहा है सर DTI वाशर का जो
हो रहा है।
जी सर पुश हो रहा है,
फुल कंप्रेशन हो रहा है।
जी जी सर, और
नॉट
30%
एक्सेप्टेबल एज पर दिस 0.1 mm पे फेल हो रहा है।
सर 0.5 में पास हो रहा, 0.4 में पास हो रहा है वो।
यदि
और
0.1 पे
जी जी
नहीं,
सर,
0.4 पे तो इंडिविजुअल का जो है 75 की बात ही नहीं है, वो तो
जी जी
इंडिविजुअल बोल्ट पे है 0.4 और 0.25। तो आपका
जी
DTI वास्तव में कितने प्रोट्रूजन है उसी के
अपने
हिसाब से
सर,
टेबल दे रखी है कि 4 में से 3 है, 4 5 में से 3 है, इस टाइप से वो टेबल दे रखी है ना।
जी सर, जी सर,
तो जितने वो हैं उसके हिसाब से इंडिविजुअल बोल्ट देखना है।
जी
75% का मतलब तो टोटल बेस पे कह रहे हो,
जी सर, जी सर, टोटल वोल्ट्स
टोटल पे फिर 0.1 की बात कर रहे हो कि 0.4 0.25 की
0.4 और 0.25 की सर।
तो 0.4 0.25 में फेल हो रहा है तो आप जो है फेल करेंगे उसको, आप यू कांट एक्सेप्ट इट।
जी सर, ओके सर।
आप पूरा उसको जो है दोबारा देखेंगे, पूरा जो है नए नए जो है उसको नई बोल्टिंग असेंबली आएगी,
जी
सेम को
सर,
रीयूज भी नहीं करेंगे।
उसमें सर हम जैसे हमारा टॉर्किंग हम 748 न्यूटन मीटर पे कर रहे हैं, अगर हम इससे ज्यादा भी है लेके चलते हैं 10%, तो कुछ बोल्ट हमारे फ्लिप भी हो जाते हैं सर।
नहीं तो आपने लास्ट आपका कैलिब्रेशन बताइए कब किया था टॉर्च रैंक, इसका टॉर्क रेंज का?
हमारा कैलिब्रेशन सर दिसंबर 24 का है सर।
1000 वो कराया है तो फिर जो है इसको पूरा का पूरा जो है एक बार ज्यादा से ज्यादा करा के और उसको पूरा, तो ये तो रिजेक्ट ही हो जाएगा आपका।
जी सर,
आइदर DTI वास्ता इज रॉन्ग और जो है बोल्ट इज नॉट ऑफ दी दैट क्वालिटी।
जी
जो चीजें बिल्कुल क्लियरली लेड डाउन है उनमें डिसीजन के लिए क्या करना है, जिसके लिए यस नो दे रखा है, इसमें फेल हो गया तो फेल हो गया है,
जी
यू
सर,
कांट एक्सेप्ट इट, यू कैन पुट इट।
ओके सर।
इसमें 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 कंफ्यूजन की बात कहाँ है? बोल लेने की तो वहां होती है ना जहां कुछ ग्रे एरिया है, ये तो बिल्कुल क्लियरली लेट डाउन है। 0.4 और 0.25 में क्या करना है? एनी अदर क्वेश्चन?
सर एक मेरा वन मोर क्वेश्चन था सर, थोड़ा
पार्डन?
सर पर्पज से है सर।
हाँ टेल मी।
मेंटेनेंस हम लोग जैसे बोले पुराने जो रिवेटेड गर्डर थे हमारे 150 फीट के 100 फीट के, उसके हम पर्टिकुलर जॉइंट का टेस्टिंग पूरा नहीं करते थे।
हाँ
HSFG के लिए अभी इंस्पेक्शन के लिए शेड्यूल इंस्पेक्शन की कोई अभी मतलब कोई गाइडलाइन जारी नहीं हुई सर अभी।
नहीं, देखिए इनको जो है जो गाइडलाइन वही है जो इंस्पेक्शन में कवर की कि ये सिम्टम मिलते हैं तो करना है।
सर
ऐसे नहीं कि सब में हम टॉर्च रेंज लगा के करने लगेंगे, ऐसी कोई गाइडलाइन नहीं है। वहां तो हम उसको
सर
हैमर से टेस्ट करने का इसलिए था कि रिवेट उसमें वो लूज हुई कि नहीं है, इसमें नहीं है ऐसे।
हाँ
जो
सर
बाकी सिम्टम दिए हैं वो सिम्टम अगर इमर्ज होते हैं,
सर
ठीक है ना।
इसमें फिर हम 100% विजुअल इंस्पेक्शन 100% करना है सर।
विजुअल तो ऑलवेज 100% है, उसमें क्या डर, मतलब आप HTS बोल्ट रिसीव करने की बात कर रहे हैं बाद में कर रहे हैं?
नहीं बाद में सर, शेड्यूल इंस्पेक्शन
बाद में तो 100% ही है ऑब्वियसली,
मतलब
वो तो उसमें भी 100% ही
सर
था।
सर सर
विजुअल तो उसमें भी 100% ही था।
सर 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 सर
10% तो आप रिवेट हैमर से कर रहे थे।
सर सर
विजुअल तो कोई भी स्ट्रक्चर पूरा 100% है।
सर सर
So,
कौन सा
हाँ हाँ हाँ
सुपर क्वेश्चन था, जैसे सर अगर कोई बड़ा प्रोजेक्ट हो तो
pardon?
वहाँ पे
No, not
HSFG
your,
सर सर है।
थोड़ा सा क्लियर नहीं है आपकी वॉइस।
हेलो।
हेलो, यस।
हाँ सर, जस्ट कहना चाहता हूँ कि अगर सर कोई बड़ा प्रोजेक्ट
हाँ
और
हाँ
वहाँ पे सप्लाई ऑफ एक्सेस जो है सर, वो मतलब डिफरेंट वेंडर्स लाइक सर पंचशील हो, स्टॉलवर्ट हो, जो भी है सर,
हम्म,
जो जब सर कैलिब्रेशन करते हैं उसका डिफरेंट लोड टॉर्क रहता है
हम्म,
ताकि सर वो प्रोट्रूशन उसका डिजायर में जाए।
हाँ हाँ।
तो सर इज देयर एनी जनरल फॉर्मूला जिसको
नो
सर मैं अडेप्ट कर
नो नो
सकूं टू
नो,
चेक
यू
दैट?
हैव टू
और
यूज सेपरेट फॉर द ईच वेंडर के सप्लाई करे जो भी स्पेक्स है वो करना है आपको। अपना जिसका जो वो है गाइडलाइन उस हिसाब से यूज करना है। पूरी असेंबली का जो है assembly as a whole, it has to behave in a particular range. So each manufacturer is free to give as per that range.
Okay, sir.
Any other?
सर 8 पास में मैक्सिमम टॉर्क दे सकते हैं सर, अलाउड है?
नहीं, आपको तो जो उसमें वो मैक्सिमम नहीं, जो आपको उसमें दिया है, जो जिस उसके लिए साइज के लिए जो टॉर्क दिया है टेबल में, वही है। उसके ऊपर जो 10% का जो वो है उस तक, नॉट बियॉन्ड दैट कभी भी।
सर एक कंपनी ने बोल्ट सप्लाई करे, उसने 440 टू 640 तक की रेंज दी सर। 640 में भी जाके बोल्ट डीटीआई उसके हार्डन थे तो वो पास नहीं हो रहे थे सर।
तो पूरा असेंबली फेल कर दीजिए ना उसकी। मींस जो उसने दिया है एज पर मैन्युफैक्चरर इंस्ट्रक्शन, हम नाउ इन द इंडिकेटर जो हमारा है, सो वो अचीव नहीं हो रहा है। इट मींस इट इज नॉट बिहेविंग एज इंटेंडेड।
सर उसने फिर रिवाइज्ड चार्ट दिया सर, वो बोलता है आप 750 तक ले जाइए। आप 750 में जाके हमारे पास हो गए, तो बोल रहा है कि 750 तक आप इसको
रिवाइज का आप देखिए, उसका जो अप्रूवल है, जो कैलिब्रेशन वहां पर है डीटीआई का, वहां भी कैलिब्रेशन कर रहे हैं ना आप?
हाँ सर,
वहां पर भी कैलिब्रेशन है। उसके अप्रूव्ड में क्या था? उसका पूरा प्रोग्राम अप्रूव्ड हुआ होगा ना
कंपनी का सर।
हाँ,
उसने क्या बोला कि सर
क्या है स्पेसिफाइड था
सर, पहले वो
गलती से सप्लाई कर दिया था, ओरिजिनल चार्ट तब अलग बात है, बट जो उनका अप्रूव अगर ये है न्यू जो में दिया तब ठीक है, नॉट अदरवाइज।
उन्होंने बोला कि फ्रैक्शन ऑफ कोफिशिएंट बढ़ गया, तो इसलिए वो
0.16 कोफिशिएंट का उससे कोई लेना नहीं है।
अच्छा
फ्रैक्शन ऑफ कोफिशिएंट टॉर्क कह रहे हैं आप?
टॉर्क के वजह से देखिए फार्मूला दिया, उन्होंने बोला कि ये आप 750 तक टॉर्क में, तो वो फिर हमारा पास होने लगा। तो क्या यूज कर सकते हैं 750 तक सर?
अगर उसके अप्रूव्ड प्रोग्राम में वो लिबर्टी दे रखी है तो ठीक है, नॉट अदरवाइज। मुझे आइडिया नहीं है कि इस टाइप का वो फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी उनको देते हैं या नहीं देते हैं, आई एम नॉट वेरी श्योर।
सर ये बहुत ज्यादा प्रॉब्लम हर जगह आ रही है, हर कंपनी के साथ, कि वो फेल हो जाते हैं, फिर वो बोलता है कि आप और टॉर्क बढ़ाइए, और टॉर्क बढ़ाइए।
नहीं, ऐसे नहीं होगा। जो उसने दिया है उसी तरीके से बिहेवियर है तो ठीक, नहीं तो फेल करेंगे, उसको रिजेक्ट कर दीजिए।
सर ठीक।
बाकी ये है कि टॉर्क रेंज को जरूर रिकैलिब्रेट करना है आपको, अगर कहीं ऐसा हो रहा है तो कुछ भी।
यस सर।
बट वहां भी तो कैलिब्रेट करते हैं ना, जब उसके यहाँ से इंस्पेक्शन करते हैं, वहां अचीव हो जाता है लोड।
सर वो तो हाँ, वहां पर मैं उसने उसी के हिसाब से चार्ट बना के दिया, मगर जब साइड पर आया तो साइड पर आने
बाद में फ्रिक्शन डिफरेंट क्या हो जाएगा? उसी से असेंबली ले रहे हैं पूरी, उसी से तो वाशर ले रहे हैं, उसी से नट ले रहे हैं, उसी से बोल्ट ले रहे हैं, उसी से जो पूरा ले रहे हैं। तो हर कॉन्टेक्ट जो फ्रिक्शन आ रहा है वो ले तो उसी से रहे हैं।
यस सर,
मूवमेंट है।
यस सर।
तो इज रेस्पॉन्सिबल फॉर दैट कि फ्रिक्शन कम ज्यादा कैसे हो गया? रिजेक्ट
सर
सब चीजों के उसी नहीं, इसीलिए तो असेंबली इंपॉर्टेंट है। यू कांट से एनीथिंग एल्स, सो दैट कि पूरी असेंबली आपकी, फ्रिक्शन तो भी उसी का है।
यस सर।
So, I think there are no more question. So, thank you all and train your people. Thank you.